I've had suicidal ideation my entire life, basically, but it only became intent 3 times. But if I was hospitalized every time I told, a practitioner that I had suicidal ideation, I would have never left the hospital.
It is a subject that often creates barrier because either people aren't really trained to address it or support it or even to explore it, because suicidal ideation is in my belief your mind's way of kind of protecting you in an odd way. What it was the thought before the ideation? What was it you were experiencing before that thought came into your mind?
Don't remember the first time, but usually it stems from exhaustion and it feels kind of like an exit hatch.
Welcome to the Two Curious MD podcast. I'm Dr. Ali Ahmed.
And I'm Dr. Soraya Khan.
With the wisdom from holistic, alternative, and these conventional medicine, we are here to challenge the status quo.
We're curious about the connectivity and complexity between diverse fields of knowledge as they relate to consciousness, chronic illness, mental health, resilience, and beyond.
Learning more about the art and science of healing, or listening to stories of extraordinary healing. You're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Two Curious MD podcast, where medicine is more than science. It's story, art, connection, and integration. Today's episode, we're going to be talking with Felicia Johnson, who has been a mental health advocate and a social media influencer, and has documented her healing journey, her struggles in depression, grief, and identity and trauma. Felicia shares her experiences navigating that grief, that depression, the profound loss in her life, confronting long-standing depression that she's had since she was very young. And at Shaw Minds has been involved in treatments with ketamine-assisted therapy, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and neurofeedback. Rather than presenting healing as a miracle cure, I hope this conversation explores the reality that recovery often involves, and in many modalities, working together with courage, vulnerability, community, and self-compassion leading the way. I hope listeners will be able to hear what treatment actually feels like from a patient's perspective, and how the identity influences mental health, and why healing often begins with learning to relate differently to ourselves and learning about ourselves in our healing. Welcome, Felicia, to our podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. For those meeting you for the first time, tell us a little bit about Felicia beyond the diagnosis.
In social media and outside of the medical field, I actually go by Flea. That is my nickname. I spell it FLE. If you see FLE or Fleabag or Fleabee anywhere on the internet, odds are it's probably me.
Yeah.
I've been using that moniker since you still needed an invite to get a Gmail. So it's been a while. I grew up in Placer County in a small town. Came out at a young age, struggled with depression and mental illness for most of my life. And I would say just within the past 3 or 4 months have I felt like I've reached some stability that's been really nice, where like I feel like I'm reaching, maybe this is what a normal person feels like.
There is a myth of normal, that's for sure.
Yes.
But what is normal feel like for you?
Oh, normal for me is, before treatment or after treatment or now. It depends.
Yeah.
I think before treatment, I was living with pretty much daily suicidal ideation, if not hourly or more. I, was slow, sluggish. Everything brought me down. I couldn't focus. I was just kind of miserable all the time. And I just thought that's how I had to get through life until we really started treating my ADHD. And then I think a lot of stuff turned around.
Mm. So describe that normal. How did that change for you in treatment?
So, I mean, getting on meds helped a lot. Like, it's one of those things where if you've lived with something every day until you're comparing your experience to others, you don't know that it's not normal. So I think the neurofeedback training I'm doing now, which I'm on my third session, has really pointed out to me how bad my ADHD is. Like, I just thought that's the way like brains work, but now that I'm actually thinking about how my attention span works, like, it's awful. It's
Yeah.
so bad.
Well, tell us more about how the
I
ADHD
mean,
show up in your life.
I'm the type of person that when I'm relaxing just by myself, like, I will be watching TV, working on my laptop, playing a video game on my iPad, and playing a different video game on my phone, kind of all simultaneously.
Wow. And that's functional for you? That
Uh,
keeps you functional? How did that kind of evolve to be that way for you?
I think part of it is like I just want to be doing so many things at once, and like having that allows me to do it. But the TV is background noise, the laptop is what I should be focusing on. And then I've just got some other side things. My streaming setup is pretty similar, where I've got the project in front of me, the TV for distraction, and computer, the computer and chat for engagement.
When was that moment for you that when you realized that I need help with what I'm doing? This is not working for me. What was that?
I mean, that moment was probably at like the age of 14.
Wow.
But so I am pretty much been in consistent treatment for 25 years. There have been gaps of like, 6 or 7 months without treatment, but since 14, I've always been on some sort of antidepressant or other, drug for mental illness of some sort. But the thing that brought me to Shaw Minds was my wife had seen my depression get worse and was like, "This isn't working. We need to get you some different help." And I was like, "Okay, like I can do that." And then I found you guys.
Mm. What do you think that she observed in you, and when that realization came?
I feel like what she probably observed was the like come down from new relationship energy. Because when you get in a new relationship, everything's exciting and fun and interesting, and you can put all of your energy into it. And then as you get further into the relationship, kind of that excitement subsides, and you return to your base level. And my base level was very low and very depressive. And so, she had asked me to pursue more help. I had pursued more help through another medical provider that was essentially failing me. Um, and then I found you guys.
I'm curious to kind of really understand from your perspective this multitasking, this kind of ADHD lifestyle or way of being. Um, which one came first? Was it depression, or was it inattention, or just kind of a way of coping with those thoughts, that suicidal ideation that was a daily phenomena for you?
So, I actually think the ADHD may have been there first, and thinking about like how I interacted with school and my teachers and kind of where I was and, growing up in the 90s and the early aughts, like ADHD meant that you were dumb.
Hmm.
My parents my school wanted me to get tested around the fourth grade, and my parents said no because I was clearly an intelligent child, so I must not have ADHD. So I think it presented at a pretty young age and then went untreated and turned into depression.
And such an impact at that point in your life that you actually remember this discussion about testing and
Oh
about
yeah.
what was that fourth grade child really experiencing at that point.
I mean, thinking about it, like it was around the time that I realized that I was smart enough that I didn't need to do my homework to pass tests. So I just stopped trying in school because if I could pass the test, like, then I'm proving I know the knowledge and the information enough to pass your exam. Why do I need to do the homework if I already understand the concept?
Mhm.
And reading aloud in school was akin to torture for me. I don't know if other people did this, but in my experience, I was reading 4 or 5 times faster than my peers. So I would read ahead and then it would get to my turn to read next and I'd have to jump back to wherever they were and try to figure out like how far behind the rest of the class was.
Yeah. And this really does sound more like the inattention was really boredom or having the class kind of being able to keep up with the way you think and the way you understand things. Wow. So much of this really calls to kind of how diagnoses are made and the labels that become the person. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, that you're inattentive, that you're not smart, that you're not interested, you're not focused. And it seems like that kind of penetrated into a sense of yourself and a sense of who you are. And tell us more about how identity kind of really showed up for you. What kind of person do you feel that you are now versus what kind of person you might have been then?
I didn't accept my ADHD diagnosis until probably 33 or 34.
Yeah.
And I think you were the first doctor that really gave me that diagnosis. And it's only in the 3 or 4 years since that I've been like, oh, right. And like even the neurofeedback, like really realizing that I can't hold on to a single thought for like more than 30 seconds. And I was like, oh, this is the problem. This
Yeah.
is the problem. Because, thinking about that flying game, I would be like, green circle, green circle, green circle. The sun is a yellow circle. Yellow circles, the sun creates iron and it's thermonuclear and like just start going off. I'm like, right, green circle, green circle.
Yeah, yeah. I can see how that can happen. And sometimes as, with advanced thinkers and again, this is where testing really becomes important in early development and early childhood is because you don't know which way of being distracted because you've got an expansive way of understanding things and the pace with others wasn't able to keep up. And thus that pattern of activity kind of got even more pronounced, it seems like,
Yeah.
where your brain is like, oh, I've got other things I can be doing at this point.
No,
Um,
I distinctly remember in high school, my parents were upset because they got my like standardized testing scores back.
yeah,
And I still tested high, but I tested lower than they thought I should have. And I was like, well, yeah, if you actually look at my test, you can see where I got bored and just started drawing designs. Like I was just filling in bubbles to make designs. I was bored and tired of taking the test, so I decided to do something else. And if you actually looked at the Scantron, you would be able to tell.
yeah, yeah. Um, Tell us a little bit about the times in your life where the depression came in and how did that affect your functional health, your relationships, your lived experience?
So I think the depression has probably been there again since puberty. I was always kind of othered as a kid and regularly told that I am like too much in general. I got made fun of in school for reading books that were larger than our textbooks by both teachers and peers.
Wow.
And so, I didn't have anyone that I related to until I turned 16 and was able to drive to Sacramento to meet other young gay kids. And that's when I, first started finding people that I identified with. Um, but, even my family, I was not my immediate family so much, but my extended family, I was othered for being the smart, weird, nerdy kid And the girl that didn't want to play house would rather play, archaeologist than play house. So it wasn't until, my 20s and 30s that I really started making friends with people that were interested in the same things that I was. And then finding those people and feeling accepted by them is kind of what helped me heal a lot.
Tell us more about that time.
Well, it's complicated. My mom, I think, has some traits of narcissistic personality disorder, and I was the family scapegoat for a really long time from my perspective. I know for sure my dad didn't know how bad my mom's treatment of me was because a lot of it was when he wasn't around. But it was pretty damaging. And then she got sick around the time when I was 24, and her substance use became substance abuse disorder. And that created a whole realm of trauma. But most of my 20s and 30s were spent partying, drinking, doing drugs, kind of numbing everything to survive. And COVID kind of changed a lot of things for everyone. And I met my wife, and, we moved in together and got married, and she got me in treatment to seeing you guys, and my mom passed away, and I was able to extract myself out of some unhealthy situations, and now I'm much better.
Yeah. It's such a story. It's such a similar experience than I've heard from many people in the LGBTQ community, where the othering really puts you in isolation, where you're not able to really be yourself, or even you often have to mask.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the unique kind of stressors that you've experienced, that you feel people should know about, who don't recognize this or haven't had this lived experience as you?
I feel like for me, I tend to do what my therapist and I have dubbed info bursting, where, and we changed it from info dumping to info bursting because I will info burst all the time. Like I love, sharing things that I'm excited about, and I can go on for a long time, and then I have to be like, "Oh, right. I'm hogging the room. I'm hogging the conversation." Like I need to tone it down and be less excited. Be like, "Do you want to hear me ramble endlessly about the subject before I like just go off for 20 minutes?"
Yeah.
And
I find,
like I feel like it's different than like mansplaining or trying to like educate someone. It's more like I am also fascinated by this thing. Let's share our fascination. And so, sometimes people don't get that. It's like, right, ask.
yeah, I find that amazing about you, actually. I find that that makes you, you have so much interest and so much awareness and knowledge, and you're really seeking out really unique things, and you've really shared a lot of those. I'm
Yeah.
actually very surprised to hear that that was what you had to go through to really.
Oh man, I remember being told all the time as a kid that I was holding people hostage just talking to them. Like anytime I felt like someone was interested in what I had to say, like I'd be like, "Oh, this is a person that actually wants to listen to me." And then, I would follow them around for the rest of the night like a little puppy.
Yeah. It seems like being really accepted or truly accepted in the community that you're living in had an impact on you and your mental health.
Oh, it really did. And, I think I'm going to get emotional, but I think my wife is the first person I've ever met that I truly believe choosed me and like loves me by choice, like not out of obligation. And finding someone that I could trust and, believed in me that much that wasn't family meant a lot and helped me heal quite a bit.
Yeah. We'll take a moment here
Yeah.
to truly acknowledge that. Yeah, to be really
Um,
seen, understood, and even by healthcare providers. What was that experience like from all of the therapy and the mental health care that you had had? And
I was seeking out talk therapy again through my previous medical provider. And I had my first session with the social worker, and I was talking to her and, giving her kind of the basic surface level rundown. And at the end of the session, she goes, "Well, you were laughing and telling jokes and you seem just fine. So, like, I think you should leave. Like, you don't need therapy." And I'm like, we've talked for 45 minutes. And, at the time I wasn't as open and honest about my suicidal ideation because I didn't want to be hospitalized. But I was like, just because someone's masking, like, doesn't mean that they're not in intense pain. It just means that they don't trust you enough to take off the mask.
yeah,
And I think that's something that medical professionals and mental health providers should think about is like, do people trust me enough to take off the mask? Because all of us mask all the time.
yeah. So your mask, how would you describe your mask and how would you describe that unmasking?
I feel like I'm in kind of a weird place now where I try not to have a mask most of the time. Because I have found that while I can be very good at masking, I don't like it and it feels disingenuous to me and it feels like I'm faking. And I've spent a lot of time trying to take the mask off. So putting it back on doesn't really serve me anymore unless I'm going into a situation where I know it's not safe to be myself.
Yeah. Yeah, safety in mental health, and especially when you really are seeking help, but you don't know if that person is going to be really receptive to you or even and not having that trust. How was it for you that when you felt fully safe?
I mean, I have been lucky to where before I started coming to Shaw Minds, I had a really good therapist for quite a few years that I felt safe around. And then by the time I started seeing you guys, I had gotten pretty good at unmasking in therapy. And I think I was able to get a lot more help. But the fear of hospitalization, I think, keeps a lot of people from being honest about what they're actually thinking and feeling.
Yeah, very
And
true.
like, I feel like some practitioners, especially newer or younger practitioners, might not know the kind of nuance between suicidal ideation and suicidal intent. And I've had suicidal ideation my entire life, basically, but it only became an intent 3 times. But if I was hospitalized every time I told, a practitioner that I had suicidal ideation, I would have never left the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a subject that often creates barrier because either people aren't really trained to address it or support it or even to explore it because
Mm.
suicidal ideation is in my belief your mind's way of kind of protecting you. What it was the thought before the ideation? What was it you were experiencing before that thought came into your mind?
I don't remember the first time, but usually it stems from exhaustion and it feels kind of like a an exit hatch.
Yeah.
Um, and I think especially when I felt like, I didn't have things to live for or reasons to want to stick around, it was like, well, why bother? And I think it's one of the things that makes me kind of envious of people that have religious or faith based practices because they have those tenets guiding you. But if you don't necessarily believe those things, then you're stuck with the, nihilistic existentialist thread of the endless vacuum of our reality.
Yeah. Or not even knowing what that could be. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You shared your mental health journey publicly um,
Yes.
in social media. Um, how did it show up for you sharing your story?
So it helped me feel like I'm not alone. And one of the biggest driving factors in a lot of my behaviors is that I don't want other people to experience what I've experienced. If I can save other people, even, 1 to 2% of the pain that I have experienced, then my experience was worth it. Like if I can make that easier on other people. Um, and so I've done a lot of work to try to, make those experiences easier for other people. But, you know, feeling like I did was really shitty. So I try to do everything I can to make sure other people don't feel that way.
Yeah. Having a space to kind of even share to those stories, that experience,
Hmm.
is often um, not available for a lot of people. And I find that online support, it's a form of communication, it's a form of connection, it's a form of kind of community, where
Hmm.
people can really, I mean, in the old days, people would sit around the fire or the camp and kind of share to their experiences. There was a lot more um, storytelling in more community. I mean, that's how, humans are designed to live. And here we are um, living this kind of disconnected but connected world. So, how did you traverse from in with your family in that sense of connection or not having that connection, and then
Um,
with the community?
I think because I never really felt super connected to my family, I was othered by them as well, except for my immediate family. I didn't really have any friends growing up that when we did get the internet, I found a community pretty quickly on the internet. And, I have a very good friend that I have been friends with for 18 years that I've never met. And, him and I have spent hundreds of hours playing video games together and, know everything about each other, but we've never met in real life. I
Uh-huh.
don't even know what he looks like really. But he's one of my nearest and dearest friends, and I've had a lot of other friends from, video games and different communities. It's just a different way of bringing people together. Um, and like anything, there's good and bad. Some people are going to be jerks on the internet, and some people are going to find their community.
Yeah. The loss of your mother has also been a significant part of your story. Would you be comfortable sharing to who
I
she was?
am, and it's weird to talk about because I think my mom was sick for a very long time. Um, and her is a trauma survivor herself, suspected. And I think she coped with it through eating, and then had gastric bypass and was no longer able to emotionally eat or cope through eating. And then the gastric bypass morphed into alcoholism. And like the first 4 years after her bypass, it wasn't really noticeable, but, the last 10 years of her life, well, she was very sick for 10 years and caused a lot of trauma and destruction. And then, she passed away. It'll be 4 years in February. Um, and I am sad that I lost my mother, but the truth of it is, as I had lost my mother 10 years before that. She had stopped being the same person. And so the grief process is different than a lot of people expect. Like I was grieving her while she was alive. I wasn't sad the way people expected because, for me, her passing was almost a gift, and it's hard to say that. But I would say, it doesn't happen very often. I think it's down to every 6 months now. But I had a recurring nightmare after she died pretty regularly that like she faked her death and came back to life and wanted to resume where everything left off. And it's one of the only nightmares I've ever had where like I wake up in a cold sweat freaking out. Um, which probably says more about the PTSD and the trauma that
Yeah.
she caused than I initially recognized.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being vulnerable in this moment. I think it's really demonstrates kind of the effect that generational trauma has. and what gets missed in diagnoses. It's not her alcoholism prior to her gastric bypass, prior to her emotional eating. The source of it really wasn't really uncovered. And sadly, it sounded like there was a cascade response to something that was never really rooted.
I mean, I've done a lot of family research and, armchair psychiatry analysis of my family. And I've traced it back to the trauma starting at my great grandfather. I don't really know. I mean, as far as I know, his trauma was becoming an Okie and homeless at 13 and migrating from Oklahoma to California to survive. And it made him a very tough man. And he was very tough and abusive to his children in a way that would now be considered abuse. But in the 1940s, it was normal to beat the gay out of someone.
Yeah.
And he made his gay son sleep in the chicken coop to try to, beat the queer out of him. And so his eldest son is my grandfather, and he, I believe, also probably has some form of survival narcissism that was then passed down to all of his kids. And like it's a clear pattern. I can even see it on, my maternal grandmother's side too.
Yeah. As we learn more and more about generational trauma and the effect it can have on that unborn child, epigenetically, that trauma that was instilled in the cellular system of your grandfather or grandmother really was transferred down. There are studies to really demonstrate that a child, when there's abuse on the mother while she's pregnant, mother and child are one unit. And essentially, when that mother feels the stress and abuse, it's felt with the baby too. And the baby is responding as well to that trauma, and it has a trauma response. So whether that, when the baby's born, the temperament of that child is, a lot of that, especially if there's toxic level abuse, it shows up in the child's temperament, in the child's response to situational stress, where they might be hypervigilant. They might have the same symptoms of PTSD that, that is occurring before that child was even born. And those feedback, that that developmental effect is happening. And that pattern is developing on the first to 5-6 years of, if there's an insult to that part of the brain, there's a pathway that develops that would normally not be there.
I mean, that makes sense.
So you can see how genetics, when people say, oh yeah, there's bipolar in our family, well, why do you think that is? And so what would be the conditions in your family that you think showed up that you can trace back into from your life to generationally?
So maternally, generationally, my grandmother had PTSD for sure, and depression and substance abuse. My mother's father on his side, I would say narcissism and PTSD. And then on my dad's side of the family, his dad was bipolar with diagnosed in a hospital, bipolar, narcissistic with OCD. And his mother, I would say, suffered from depression most of my life. And her mother was bipolar as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And all stemming from some sort of trauma, some sort of generational. When you've done ketamine treatments, tell us about your experience with ketamine treatments.
I mean, I really like the ketamine treatments. I think they help me kind of see behind the curtain in a certain way, like kind of see how my brain works and ride the roller coaster of my brain untamed. Um, I've had a lot of fun playing with my music selection and using
Yes.
songs and music in my journeys that have specific memories attached to them to help kind of trigger the state that I was in then and process those things. And I think it's been incredibly helpful. Um, I remember when my mom died or when my mom was sick before she passed away, I would want to listen to Ozzy Osbourne and Metallica because those were her favorite albums. And I remember the practitioner that I was with was like, "Are you sure? Are you
Yeah.
sure that's what you want to listen to?"
Yeah. What surprised you about that experience? How did you find that music played a part in that experience with you and ketamine?
I mean, it just adds to the landscape of the roller coaster. Like, I was still pretty focused on my mom, and I thought about the first concert that she took me to, which was Ozfest, and the effect that metal had on her as part of her otherness where we lived. Because I do think part of her trauma was also not being able to live an unmasked life.
Yeah. How did ketamine help you in how you saw yourself or in your mental wholeness or in your identity as who you were?
I think the journeys help me gain some understanding and are kind of launching pads for journaling or philosophical thought. And then I feel like the chemical aspect of it, something about it keep silences the suicidal ideation. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I can tell when it's starting to be too long since my last journey because the frequency of suicidal ideation will increase.
Mm. Yeah. Um, what role did therapy play for you with ketamine treatments?
Therapy has been helpful. And I think doing the ketamine and the therapy together is also good because the ketamine kind of lowers your inhibitions and lets you get access to those places that you might be shielding and guarding because you're not ready. Um, and ketamine just kind of helps you push through those, I feel like, a little bit quicker. Uh, because I'm one of those people that when I figure out what the problem is, I want to solve it. I'm not once I'm doing a project, I'm not necessarily the most gentle. Once I know where I need to go.
Yeah.
So it has helped me start having conversations with my inner child. Um, and doing some reparenting of my inner child, which can be trying and is still kind of scary for me.
It's still an ongoing thing you're working
It
on.
is, yeah. It's hard for me to face my inner child because I sometimes struggle with not feeling like I've disappointed her or let her down. But also my life is awesome right now, so like I don't know what she would be disappointed in.
Yeah. Yeah. Seems like there's still a part of that wound that is so palpable,
Oh
so
yeah, no,
felt.
no, that wound is still I'm still working on it. It's
Yeah.
still part of the healing process.
Yeah. Well, TMS comes up because you've done ketamine, you've done TMS. How is TMS different for you?
Um I feel like TMS was probably the thing that like pushed the depression as finally aside enough to start treating the ADHD. Like the ketamine helped with the suicidal ideation so that I can function, and then the TMS and the therapy helped subside the depression enough to where now we're treating the root cause, which is a lot bigger of a root than I thought it was initially.
Yeah. Kind of tell us the audience a little bit more about your experience with TMS and what that was like.
I mean, I feel like as far as mental health treatments that I've had, TMS, besides the time and getting there every day, is like the easiest treatment that I've had. Like I show up, I sit in a chair for 15 minutes, I answer some questions and I leave. Like I get to see, the lovely staff and the people that I've gotten to know over the years of going there. Um, but it doesn't really require a lot of work on the patient's part, which is nice.
Yeah. Besides coming in every day.
Yeah, besides coming in every day, like,
Yeah.
but you're not spending an hour processing feelings where you're going to be drained afterwards. You can drive afterwards, so it's not like ketamine where you're kind of out for the rest of the day. You don't necessarily leave feeling drained or woozy. Like you can pop in, get your dose, go about your day, and it's helping you.
Well, let's just kind of categorically kind of look at what were the changes that you noticed with neurofeedback, with attention, with versus TMS. How would you differentiate those things?
I think TMS, I feel like I noticed the changes less consciously, like they happened and they're clear in my behavior, but because they were subtle and I don't have the best recall of the changes of the subtlety, like other people noticed the changes before I did and more than I did. Um, but I think that's why I like the neurofeedback, because while I'm doing it, I can be like, oh, this is the thing that isn't working. And this is what I need to do to fix it, is just keep training it. But I don't think I ever truly believed I really had an attention problem until the neurofeedback. And I was
Yeah.
like, whoa.
Well, it sounds like your journey from survival is more
Yeah.
now optimization.
Yeah, yeah, I have left, flight, fight, or freeze, and now I'm working on thriving instead of just surviving.
Yeah. Who do you feel like you're becoming?
I don't know yet. Yeah,
And if
someone interesting.
depression and ADHD hadn't consumed so much energy in your life, what now has that made room for?
Right now, I have been spending a lot of time focusing on myself and my wife and our family. I have a lot more energy to do things than I used to. I don't get as drained. I'm willing to go out more in public, and my wife and I have been going on more date nights. I've been spending more time with friends. Like I am less agoraphobic than I used to be. We're traveling a lot more and I don't get as tired when I travel. Um, I'm not clinging to, my safety foods or shows or my safety routines as much as I was. I'm starting to branch out a little bit more.
No.
And I've got, my big cross stitch project that I am working on and hoping to get back to. I'm also in the middle of developing yet another new mobile game. This is my third mobile game. I have played around with development. I think ADHD is really easily taken captive by AI in a lot of ways. And I have all of these dreams and plans and ideas for things, and I can just spit them into the AI and be like, what can I do with this?
Yeah.
And so I've had a lot of different chats with AI about, what can I do with this idea?
Yeah, and I've been fascinated by it, and I do tell other patients about some of the things that you shared with me about the work that you've done in therapy. It can be so helpful to have kind of some place to kind of really explore those parts and to really not see them as demons or as stigmatized as we often do. Um,
Hmm.
what are some of the things that you'd like to share with your audience about who follow you? Um, and the responsibility of seeking help for mental health.
Um, I just want everyone to know that, like, it does eventually get better. Like, I was miserable for probably the first 30 years of my life. And, it started ticking up. after 30, and I will turn 40 next year, and this has by far been the best decade that I've had, and if they keep getting better from here, then it's going to be pretty awesome. But you don't have to live with mental illness. You don't have to be miserable. Um, talk to someone, talk to anyone. Find me, talk to me online. I'm always willing and able to listen to, anyone that needs to talk to your friends, find a community. Just, you don't have to be alone. Being alone in today's day and age is a choice.
Looking back at your inner child, what would you say to her?
The first 30 years are going to suck, kid. Like, it's just, you're not going to get to really live until you kind of push through all of that. You're going to have a lot of fun, and you're going to, find out a lot through screwing around and doing stupid things, but it will get better.
Yeah. Having hope, having community, not being alone, finding a place.
Hope is hard. Hope is really hard. Because I feel like it's a double-edged sword. Like, too much hope and you lose focus, and not enough and you lose the will to continue.
There's fine balance between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for sharing your story, Felicia, Flea.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Ahmad.
Yeah, we usually ask some rapid fire questions just to make it fun for our audience. Coffee or tea?
Neither. Soda.
Soda, okay. Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
One book everyone should read.
The Art of Happiness.
Nice. A music that heals.
Broadway.
A place where you feel completely safe.
My house.
One word your younger self needed to hear.
Patience.
One thing that grief has taught you.
There's only one way out. Oh, there's only one way out, and that is through.
That's through. There you go. If your brain had a theme song, and this is a great question, I love this one. If your brain had a theme song, what would it be?
That is a really good question. Probably one of those ridiculous polymorphic sound mashups on TikTok that's like every song mashed into each other at once.
Oh, that sounds like amazing. That's so creative.
You should look them up. They're pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, final question. 3 words that describe today's plea.
Kindness, understanding, and compassion.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you, Felicia, for being here. Thank you for your honesty. Your story reminds us that healing doesn't erase our past. It just changes our relationship with it. You've shown that recovery isn't about becoming somebody new. It's just becoming more yourself, the unmasking, and being okay with that. That's who you are. There's nothing to mask anyways.
Yeah.
And it is about uncovering you and who's also behind the depression, the grief, the shame, the trauma. So I really thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Two Curious MD podcast. We hope today's episode inspired you to ask new questions and explore fresh perspectives. We challenge you to ask us those unasked questions that you're curious about in your medical practice, condition, health, and wellness.
If you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to subscribe, share it with somebody just as curious, and leave us a review. It helps us keep the curiosity alive. Post or comment with a question or curious inquiry that you have and seek to explore or learn with us. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.